the eternal rhythm of bureaucratic process, as regular and reliable as the orbit of the planet itself. Yet this certainty comes at a price that extends beyond simple freedom. The citizens of Terra live their entire lives without ever experiencing genuine surprise, authentic spontaneity, or the terrible beauty of genuine choice. Their days unfold according to patterns established by their great-great-grandparents. Their careers follow trajectories determined by aptitude tests administered in childhood, and their deaths occur at statistically predictable intervals that allow for efficient resource allocation. They achieve a kind of immortality through the absolute predictability of their existence, becoming components in a machine so vast and complex that their individual mortality becomes irrelevant. But there is another Terra that exists beneath even these ordered realms, a shadow world that extends down into the deepest foundations of the planet. Here, in the sump levels and abandoned industrial complexes that form the archaeological layers of human habitation, dwell those souls for whom even the harsh certainty of middle hive existence represents an impossible luxury. These are the forgotten citizens of Terra, the descendants of workers who built the great structures above them, the inheritors of genetic modifications that once served purposes now lost to time, the keepers of technologies that continue to function despite being understood by no living human. In these depths, where the recycled air carries flavors of rust and ancient plastics, where the only light comes from bioluminescent cultures that have evolved over centuries to digest human waste, where the sound of the great atmospheric processes creates a constant, rhythmic breathing that serves as the heartbeat of the world, humanity continues to exist in forms that would be barely recognizable to those who dwell above. These deep dwellers have adapted to their environment with the same ruthless efficiency that characterizes all Terran existence, developing social structures, religious practices, and survival strategies that represent 10 millennia of evolution in the depths. They worship the Emperor through rituals that predate the imperial cult itself, maintaining shrines built from components salvaged from technologies that once served the conquest of the galaxy. Their prayers, whispered in dialects that have diverged so far from standard Gothic that they require translation services provided by specialized ecclesiarchy linguists, rise through the atmospheric recycling systems to join the great chorus of human devotion that surrounds the Golden Throne. Their faith, tested by conditions that would break the spirit of citizens from more comfortable worlds, burns with an intensity that shames the carefully modulated devotions of the upper hives. Yet they too contribute to the great work of keeping Terra alive. In the deepest industrial complexes, where the boundary between technology and biology has long since dissolved, they tend to machines that process the raw materials of existence itself. They operate recycling systems that transform the waste products of 1 trillion human souls back into the basic components of life, maintaining cycles of renewal that have continued unbroken since the palace walls first rose from Terran soil. Their work, performed in chambers so deep that the weight of the world above creates pressures that would crush unprotected humans, represents the foundation upon which all other Terran existence depends. The planet's ecosystem, such as it remains, exists entirely as an artifact of human engineering. Natural weather has been replaced by atmospheric management systems that regulate temperature, humidity, and air composition, according to schedules determined by calculations that take into account the respiratory needs of specific population demographics in individual hab blocks. Rainfall, when it occurs, falls from mechanical cloud seeding operations designed to provide exactly the amount of moisture necessary for optimal industrial efficiency. The seasons change according to administrative decree, their timing adjusted to maximize productivity during crucial periods of bureaucratic activity. This artificial environment creates its own forms of beauty, harsh and mathematical but possessed of a grandeur that speaks to the power of human will applied over geological timescales. The great atmospheric processors, visible from the highest spires as vast columns of engineered cloud that stretch from horizon to horizon, create weather patterns of such complexity and precision that their observation has become a specialized field of study within the Adeptus Mechanicus. The interplay of artificial lighting with the engineered atmospheric compositions produces sunsets and dawns that follow no natural pattern, yet achieve effects of such haunting beauty that viewing them has become a form of prayer among the upper hive nobility. The rhythms of Terran life follow patterns that reflect not the rotation of the planet or the progression of seasons, but the vast administrative cycles that govern imperial bureaucracy. The Terran year is divided not into months but into processing periods, each dedicated to specific categories of bureaucratic activity. The first processing period, lasting approximately 2 standard months, is devoted to the reception and initial cataloging of reports from the segmentum commands. The second period focuses on cross-referencing these reports with existing files, a process that requires the labor of millions of scribes working in shifts that continue without interruption. The third period involves the preparation of summary documents, the fourth their review by appropriate authorities, the fifth the drafting of response communications, and so forth, through a cycle that has been refined over millennia to achieve maximum efficiency in the processing of galactic information. During each of these periods, the entire population of Terra adjusts its activities to support the dominant administrative function. Citizens find that their food rations change composition to support the mental activities required for different types of bureaucratic work. The lighting in public spaces shifts to wavelengths that have been determined to optimize productivity for specific tasks. Even the temperature and humidity in hab blocks are adjusted to maintain ideal conditions for the millions of scribes, clerks, and administrators whose coordinated efforts keep the Imperium functioning. This coordination extends beyond simple resource management to encompass the deepest aspects of human psychology. The citizens of Terra have evolved, through 10 millennia of careful selection and environmental pressure, into forms of humanity specifically adapted for bureaucratic efficiency. Their attention spans, memory capabilities, and emotional responses have been shaped by generations of life in an environment where the ability to process information accurately and without distraction represents the difference between survival and elimination. They demonstrate levels of focus and dedication that citizens of other worlds regard as superhuman, yet they achieve this not through genetic enhancement or technological augmentation, but through the simple pressure of existing in an environment where such capabilities are necessary for survival. The social structures that have emerged from this evolutionary pressure represent humanity's adaptation to existence as components in a vast administrative machine. Families form not around emotional bonds or economic necessity, but around complementary bureaucratic skills that allow household units to achieve greater efficiency in their assigned tasks. Marriages are arranged not by parents or personal preference, but by administratum efficiency consultants who analyze psychological profiles to determine optimal pairings for maximum productivity. Children are educated not according to their interests or natural talents, but according to projections of future bureaucratic needs that are calculated decades in advance by analytical engines whose complexity rivals the cogitators that guide Imperial Navy vessels through warp space. Yet within this system, forms of love, art, and individual expression continue to exist, though they have been transformed by the environment that shapes them. Terran poetry, composed in the brief intervals between shifts in the great administrative centers, achieves levels of concentrated meaning that reflect the pressure under which it is created. Each word is chosen not just for its literary merit, but for its efficiency in conveying multiple layers of meaning, since poets know that their audiences have neither the time nor the energy for unnecessary elaboration. The result is an art form of extraordinary compression and power, where single verses contain the emotional weight that would require entire epics to convey under other circumstances. Music on Terra has evolved into something that serves both aesthetic and functional purposes. The great choirs that perform in the administrative cathedrals sing in harmonies that have been mathematically optimized to create acoustic environments that enhance mental clarity and reduce stress among the scribes and clerks who labor in these spaces. Their voices, trained from childhood to produce precise tonal qualities, create soundscapes that transform the mechanical rhythm of bureaucratic work into something approaching the sacred. Listening to these choirs, even the most mundane tasks of data processing and file maintenance take on qualities of religious devotion, turning the vast machinery of imperial administration into a form of worship that encompasses every citizen on the planet. The visual arts have been similarly transformed by Terran conditions. Painters work not with traditional pigments, but with substances extracted from the atmospheric processes and industrial recycling systems that sustain planetary life. Their colors carry literal traces of the environment that shapes Terran existence, creating artworks that serve simultaneously as aesthetic objects and as archives of atmospheric composition, industrial efficiency, and population density. Viewing these paintings, citizens can read the history of their world in chemical residues and molecular traces that tell stories more complete than any written record. Architecture on Terra represents the ultimate expression of human adaptation to impossible circumstances. The great hab blocks that house the planet's population are not simply buildings but vast ecosystems, engineered to support human life at population densities that approach the theoretical limits of possibility. Each structure contains its own atmospheric processing systems, waste recycling facilities, food production capabilities, and internal transport networks. They are designed to function as closed systems, capable of sustaining their populations, even if completely isolated from the larger planetary infrastructure. Yet these buildings also serve as monuments to human endurance and ingenuity. Their construction required engineering solutions that pushed the boundaries of possibility, architectural innovations that solved problems no other human civilization had ever faced. The great spires that rise from the surface toward the artificial sky represent achievements that dwarf the pyramids of ancient Terra, the space elevators of the dark age of technology, or even the massive fortifications that protect the imperial palace itself. They stand as testaments to humanity's refusal to surrender to circumstances that would have destroyed any other species, proof that the human will to survive can overcome even the mathematical impossibility of supporting 1 trillion souls on a single world. The daily routine of a Terran citizen reflects the perfect integration of individual existence with planetary necessity. They wake to the sound of atmospheric processes cycling through their morning adjustment phase, a deep, rhythmic breathing that serves as the planet's heartbeat. Their first act upon waking is to check the air quality indicators that determine whether the day's work will require standard respiratory protection or enhanced filtration systems. They consume their morning ration, its composition determined by their assigned metabolic profile and the day's projected caloric requirements, while listening to devotional broadcasts that combine spiritual instruction with practical information about atmospheric conditions, transport schedules, and bureaucratic priorities. Their journey to their assigned workplace takes them through transport networks that represent marvels of logistics and engineering. The great pneumatic tubes that carry citizens between levels operate with precision that allows millions of people to reach their destinations within minutes of their scheduled arrival times. These systems, maintained by tech priests who regard their function as a form of prayer, achieve efficiency ratings that approach perfection, moving human cargo through the vertical city with the reliability of orbital mechanics. At their workstations, Terran citizens perform tasks that contribute to the vast computational network that is imperial administration. A single clerk, processing requisitions for ammunition shipments to a frontier world, influences decisions that will determine the outcome of battles fought light years away. Their accuracy in transcribing supply codes determines whether Imperial Guard regiments receive the equipment they need to survive alien invasions. Their diligence in cross-referencing shipping schedules affects the timing of reinforcements that could save entire planetary populations from destruction. The weight of this responsibility creates a psychological environment unlike anything found on other worlds. Every Terran citizen carries the knowledge that their individual competence has galactic implications, that their personal failure could result in the deaths of millions of people they will never meet. This awareness transforms even the most routine bureaucratic tasks into matters of life and death, infusing every aspect of daily work with an intensity that approaches the sacred. The simple act of filing a document correctly becomes an act of devotion to the Emperor and service to humanity, while errors in data processing carry the spiritual weight of heresy. Yet the citizens of Terra have learned to bear this burden without being crushed by it. They develop psychological strategies that allow them to function effectively under pressure that would drive inhabitants of other worlds to madness. They practice meditation techniques that transform repetitive bureaucratic tasks into forms of prayer, finding spiritual meaning in the precise execution of administrative procedure. They create support networks that provide emotional sustenance without disrupting the efficiency of their work, sharing the psychological load of galactic responsibility among millions of souls who understand the unique pressures of Terran existence. The education system on Terra reflects the planet's role as the administrative center of human civilization. Children begin their formal training as soon as they demonstrate basic literacy, entering educational programs that are designed not to develop well-rounded individuals, but to create highly specialized components for the bureaucratic machinery. Students are tested constantly, not just for their academic achievement but for psychological traits that will determine their ultimate placement within the administrative hierarchy. Those who demonstrate exceptional memory capabilities are directed toward archival training, where they learn to memorize and recall vast quantities of information with perfect accuracy. Those who show aptitude for pattern recognition are channeled into analytical programs that prepare them for careers in data correlation and trend analysis. Students with particular skill in linguistic precision receive training in legal documentation and regulatory interpretation. Each educational track is designed to produce individuals whose capabilities perfectly match the needs of specific bureaucratic functions, creating a system where human potential is developed not according to individual interests, but according to administrative necessity. Yet even within this utilitarian framework, Terra's educational institutions maintain traditions that connect their students to the deeper heritage of human civilization. Students learn not just the technical skills they will need for their assigned careers, but also the historical and philosophical foundations that give meaning to their work. They study the great documents of imperial law not merely as procedural guidelines but as expressions of humanity's highest aspirations. They memorize passages from the works of the primarchs, not just as ideological instruction but as literature that connects them to heroes whose achievements transcend bureaucratic categories. The religious life of Terra represents the ultimate expression of the imperial cult, refined by 10 millennia of theological development and shaped by the unique conditions of life on humanity's homeworld. Every citizen participates in daily devotional practices that are simultaneously expressions of personal faith and components of planetary-scale rituals designed to support the Golden Throne. Their prayers, synchronized with those of billions of other souls, create psychic resonances that contribute to the Emperor's continued existence in ways that extend beyond ordinary understanding. The great cathedrals that serve as focal points for Terran religious life represent architectural achievements that rival the imperial palace itself. These structures, carved from single blocks of stone quarried from the deepest levels of the planet, rise through multiple atmospheric layers to reach heights where the air grows thin and the light of the Golden Throne becomes visible to the naked eye. Within their chambers, ceremonies unfold that incorporate elements from every human culture that has ever existed, creating liturgies of such complexity and beauty that participation in them represents the highest honor available to ordinary citizens. Yet the most profound religious practices on Terra occur not in these great public spaces, but in the small shrines and personal altars that ordinary citizens maintain in their living spaces. Here, in chambers barely large enough to accommodate a single person, devotions are offered that possess an intensity and sincerity that shames the elaborate ceremonies of the great cathedrals. Citizens who spend their days processing bureaucratic documents find in these private prayers the spiritual meaning that transforms their mechanical labors into acts of worship, connecting their individual struggles to the cosmic battle for humanity's survival. The medical system on Terra has evolved to address health challenges that exist nowhere else in the galaxy. The population density and atmospheric conditions create disease vectors that require constant monitoring and treatment, while the psychological stresses of bureaucratic life produce forms of mental illness that are unique to heavily administered worlds. Terran medical practitioners have developed treatments that address not just physical ailments but the spiritual maladies that arise from lives spent in service to administrative machinery. Hospitals on Terra serve simultaneously as medical facilities and as temples, places where physical healing is combined with spiritual counseling designed to help patients understand their illness within the context of their service to the Emperor. Treatment protocols incorporate both medical intervention and religious instruction, recognizing that health on Terra depends not just on biological function, but on psychological adaptation to the unique pressures of planetary existence. The most skilled medical practitioners are those who can address both the physical symptoms of their patients and the spiritual needs that arise from life in an environment where individual identity must be subordinated to bureaucratic efficiency. The transportation systems that move people and materials across Terra represent engineering solutions to problems of logistics that exist nowhere else in human space. The sheer volume of human traffic that must be processed daily requires transport networks of staggering complexity, systems that must coordinate the movement of billions of individuals while maintaining the efficiency necessary for planetary survival. The great atmospheric railways that connect different levels of the planetary city operate on schedules calculated to the second, their timing coordinated with work shifts, meal distributions, and religious observances to ensure that no citizen spends unnecessary time in transit. Yet these transport systems also serve as social spaces where the rigid hierarchies of Terran society temporarily dissolve. Citizens from different administrative levels find themselves traveling together through the atmospheric tunnels, sharing the common experience of movement through the vast vertical city that is their world. In these brief intervals between their assigned duties, conversations occur that transcend bureaucratic categories, creating moments of human connection that provide psychological relief from the pressures of administrative existence. The food production and distribution systems on Terra have achieved a complexity that borders on the miraculous, supporting a population that consumes resources on a scale that defies mathematical possibility. Nutrients arrive from across the galaxy, processed through distribution networks that ensure every citizen receives exactly the caloric intake necessary for optimal performance of their assigned duties. The great processing centers that transform raw materials into consumable rations operate with efficiency that approaches perfection, creating food products that provide complete nutritional support while minimizing waste and resource expenditure. Yet even within this utilitarian framework, Terran cuisine has developed characteristics that reflect the planet's unique culture and conditions. Flavoring agents extracted from atmospheric processes give Terran food distinctive tastes that citizens regard as essential elements of their planetary identity. Preparation techniques that maximize nutritional efficiency while minimizing preparation time have evolved into culinary traditions that connect contemporary Terra to its ancient past. The simple act of sharing a meal becomes a cultural practice that reinforces social bonds and provides psychological sustenance in an environment where individual needs must always be subordinated to collective efficiency. The waste processing systems that handle the byproducts of 1 trillion human lives represent engineering achievements that rival the great architectural monuments of the planet. Every waste product, from human biological waste to the worn-out components of bureaucratic machinery, is processed through recycling systems that transform it back into the raw materials necessary for continued planetary survival. These systems operate with efficiency ratings that approach perfection, creating closed-loop cycles that minimize the planet's dependence on external resources while maintaining the quality of life necessary for effective bureaucratic function. The technology that makes Terran life possible operates at levels of complexity that challenge comprehension. Atmospheric processes the size of continents regulate air quality for specific population demographics, adjusting oxygen content, humidity levels, and trace gas concentrations according to schedules calculated by cogitators whose memory banks contain more information than some planetary libraries. Power generation systems that tap energy sources ranging from geothermal taps driven deep into the planet's core to solar collectors that operate in high orbit provide the electricity necessary to sustain artificial daylight for populations that have never seen natural sunlight. Water purification and distribution networks process and redistribute liquid resources that have been cycled through the planetary ecosystem countless times, each molecule carrying traces of its passage through previous generations of Terran citizens. The recycling is so complete that water consumed by contemporary citizens contains molecular components that may have been consumed by the Emperor himself during the Unification Wars, connecting the present population to the deepest roots of imperial history through the most basic necessities of biological existence. Yet, the most remarkable aspect of Terran technology is not its complexity but its invisibility. Citizens go about their daily lives without conscious awareness of the vast technological infrastructure that makes their existence possible. The systems that regulate atmospheric composition, manage waste disposal, process food distribution, and coordinate transport networks operate so smoothly and efficiently that they have become as transparent as natural processes, allowing citizens to focus their attention on the bureaucratic tasks that justify their existence rather than on the engineering marvels that make those tasks possible. The communication networks that connect Terra to the rest of the galaxy represent the nervous system of imperial civilization, carrying information flows that determine the fate of entire sectors. The great astropathic choirs that send and receive messages across interstellar distances operate from facilities buried deep within the planet's crust, their psychic communications protected by layers of both physical and spiritual shielding. The messages they transmit and receive carry the weight of galactic governance, determining the deployment of Imperial Guard regiments, the allocation of resources to frontier worlds, and the responses to alien incursions that threaten human civilization. These communications create a constant flow of information that influences every aspect of Terran existence. Citizens working in data processing centers handle reports from battles fought in distant star systems, requisitions for equipment needed by colonies they will never visit, and administrative updates from planetary governors whose names they will never know. The global scope of their work creates a psychological environment where the concerns of individual planets or star systems become merged into a vast tapestry of imperial necessity that extends beyond ordinary human comprehension. The law enforcement systems on Terra operate according to principles that balance the need for social order with the realities of population density that makes traditional policing impossible. The Adeptus Arbites maintain order not through constant surveillance or physical presence, but through administrative systems that make deviation from established procedure practically impossible. Citizens comply with legal requirements not because they fear punishment, but because the bureaucratic infrastructure of their lives makes compliance the path of least resistance, while deviation requires effort and resources that most individuals cannot afford. Yet, when enforcement becomes necessary, it operates with efficiency that reflects the absolute authority of imperial law. Violators of established procedure find themselves processed through judicial systems that operate with mechanical precision, their cases handled by administrative clerks whose decisions are based not on individual circumstances but on algorithmic analysis of legal precedent and bureaucratic necessity. Justice on Terra is swift, certain, and impersonal, reflecting the planet's role as a place where individual needs must always be subordinated to collective efficiency. The military presence on Terra serves not as a protection against external threats but as a symbol of the planet's role as the heart of human civilization. The regiments stationed on the homeworld are drawn from the finest soldiers in the Imperium, individuals whose service record and loyalty have been tested in battles across the galaxy. Their presence provides not just security but inspiration, reminding citizens that their bureaucratic labors support heroes whose courage and sacrifice defend humanity against alien threats and heretical rebellion. These soldiers, despite their elite status, live according to the same principles of efficiency and subordination that govern civilian life on Terra. Their barracks are integrated into the same atmospheric processing systems that serve the general population. Their meals come from the same distribution networks that feed bureaucratic workers, and their daily routines follow schedules coordinated with the planetary administrative cycles. They represent the ultimate expression of imperial discipline, individuals whose personal identity has been completely merged with their function as instruments of the Emperor's will. The cultural life that emerges from Terran conditions represents humanity's adaptation to existence under circumstances that would destroy the spirit of any other species. Art forms develop that incorporate the rhythmic sounds of atmospheric processes, creating musical compositions that transform the mechanical breathing of the planet into aesthetic experience. Literature emerges that finds beauty in the precision of bureaucratic language, creating poetry that elevates administrative procedure to the level of sacred ritual. Visual arts develop that incorporate the industrial byproducts of planetary survival, creating works that transform the detritus of overpopulation into objects of contemplation and beauty. Yet the most profound cultural achievement of Terra is the development of social structures that allow billions of individuals to live together without losing their fundamental humanity. Citizens develop forms of courtesy and consideration that make daily life possible under conditions of crowding that would drive other populations to violence and madness. They create informal networks of mutual support that provide emotional sustenance without interfering with bureaucratic efficiency. They maintain traditions that connect them to their individual heritage, while participating in planetary-scale rituals that subsume their personal identity into the collective identity of humanity itself. The economic system of Terra operates according to principles that transcend ordinary concepts of production and consumption. The planet produces nothing but administration, yet it consumes resources on a scale that rivals entire star systems. Its economic value lies not in material production but in its function as the central processing unit of human civilization, the place where information from across the galaxy is collected, analyzed, and transformed into the decisions that guide imperial policy. Citizens participate in this economy not as workers seeking personal advancement, but as components in a vast computational system whose output determines the survival of humanity itself. Their labor has value not because it produces goods or services, but because it contributes to the information processing that keeps the Imperium functioning. Their compensation comes not in the form of personal wealth, but in the knowledge that their work contributes to humanity's continued existence, a form of payment that transcends material considerations. The environmental conditions that shape daily life on Terra represent the ultimate expression of humanity's ability to adapt to circumstances that would destroy any natural ecosystem. The atmosphere, entirely artificial, maintains chemical compositions that optimize human health and psychological function while supporting the technological systems that make planetary survival possible. Temperature and humidity are regulated not according to seasonal cycles, but according to administrative schedules that maximize bureaucratic efficiency. Even the electromagnetic environment is carefully controlled, with radiation levels adjusted to support the optimal function of both human biology and electronic equipment. Yet within this completely artificial environment, citizens develop emotional connections to their surroundings that rival the attachments that residents of natural worlds feel toward their landscapes. They learn to find beauty in the interplay of artificial lighting with engineered atmospheric compositions, to appreciate the aesthetic qualities of architectural forms that serve purely functional purposes, to derive spiritual satisfaction from participation in environmental cycles that are entirely the product of human engineering. Their love for their world, though directed toward an environment that is entirely artificial, possesses the same depth and authenticity as the affection that citizens of garden worlds feel for their natural surroundings. The psychological adaptations that allow humans to thrive under Terran conditions represent evolutionary developments that point toward humanity's future as a galactic species. Citizens develop attention spans and memory capabilities that far exceed the norms for baseline humanity, mental abilities that have been shaped by generations of life in an information-rich environment. They demonstrate emotional resilience that allows them to function effectively under psychological pressures that would incapacitate individuals from less demanding worlds. They develop social skills that allow them to maintain personal relationships within bureaucratic frameworks that would fragment human connections under other circumstances. These adaptations come at costs that extend beyond simple individual freedom. Terran citizens sacrifice spontaneity for predictability, personal choice for collective efficiency, and individual expression for social harmony. They live their entire lives according to patterns established by administrative necessity, their personal desires subordinated to the needs of planetary survival. Yet they achieve in return a form of security and purpose that citizens of frontier worlds can barely imagine, a certainty about their role in the cosmos that provides meaning even under the most difficult circumstances. The religious significance of Terra extends far beyond its political importance as the seat of imperial government. The planet serves as the spiritual center of human civilization, the place where the Emperor's presence is most strongly felt, and where the rituals that sustain human faith achieve their highest development. Every prayer offered on Terra carries additional spiritual weight because of its proximity to the Golden Throne. Every act of devotion gains meaning from its performance on humanity's homeworld. This spiritual significance influences every aspect of daily life, transforming ordinary activities into acts of religious observance. Citizens regard their bureaucratic labors not simply as employment, but as forms of prayer. Their careful attention to administrative detail as expressions of devotion to the Emperor. Their participation in the vast systems that keep the planet functioning becomes a form of worship. Their willingness to subordinate personal desires to collective needs, an expression of faith that transcends ordinary religious practice. The future of Terra remains as uncertain as the future of humanity itself, dependent on systems and technologies whose continued function requires constant maintenance and occasional miraculous intervention. The planet's population continues to grow despite the apparent impossibility of supporting additional human life, sustained by innovations in resource management and social organization that push the boundaries of possibility ever further outward. Its citizens continue to adapt to conditions that grow more challenging with each passing century, developing new forms of human capability that allow them to thrive under circumstances that would have destroyed previous generations. Yet Terra's citizens face this uncertain future with the same determination that has allowed their world to survive 10 millennia of impossible challenges. They continue their daily labors, knowing that each day of successful planetary operation represents a victory against entropy itself, a triumph of human will over the mathematical impossibility of their existence. They raise their children to inherit not wealth or comfort, but the knowledge and skills necessary to continue humanity's greatest administrative achievement, the maintenance of a world that serves as both the brain and the heart of galactic civilization. The legacy of Terra lies not in monuments or artifacts, but in the demonstration it provides of humanity's capacity for survival under any circumstances. The planet stands as proof that human beings can adapt to conditions that would destroy any other known species, that human ingenuity can solve problems that approach the limits of physical possibility, and that human determination can sustain civilizations that transcend the boundaries of individual mortality. Every citizen who lives and works on Terra contributes to this legacy, their individual existence serving as testimony to the power of human will applied across geological timescales. In the end, Terra represents both humanity's greatest achievement and its most profound sacrifice. The planet demonstrates what human beings can accomplish when they subordinate individual desires to collective necessity, when they apply their intelligence and determination to problems that exceed the scope of ordinary imagination, when they commit themselves completely to purposes that extend beyond personal survival. Yet it also represents the price of such achievements, the human costs of existence as components in machinery that operates according to necessities that transcend individual understanding or choice. Every breath taken on Terra carries the weight of this legacy. Every day survived on the homeworld represents another victory in humanity's ongoing struggle against entropy and extinction. The citizens who call Terra home live their lives as both beneficiaries and victims of humanity's greatest success, sustained by systems that represent the pinnacle of human achievement and the deepest expression of human tragedy. The pilgrimage routes that wind through Terra's vertical landscape tell stories that no official record will ever preserve. In the great atmospheric shafts that connect the surface levels to the deepest foundations, travelers encounter shrines that predate the Imperium itself, maintained by custodians whose genetic modifications mark them as descendants of the first Terran engineers. These guardians, their bodies adapted over millennia to survive in the toxic atmosphere of the deep levels, speak in whispers of the time before the atmospheric processes, when Terra's sky was blue and its rivers ran clear with water that had never been recycled through human bodies. Their memories, passed down through oral traditions that survive in the spaces between official records, preserve knowledge of a world that no longer exists. They remember when the great spires were built not as monuments to bureaucratic efficiency, but as desperate attempts to house populations fleeing from surface conditions that had grown too toxic for unprotected human life. They remember when the first atmospheric processes were activated, transforming Terra's natural weather patterns into the regulated climate that now sustains 1 trillion souls. They remember the day when the last natural bird died, its song replaced forever by the mechanical rhythm of planetary machinery. These deep custodians serve functions that extend beyond simple maintenance of the shrines they guard. They operate monitoring systems that track atmospheric composition in regions too dangerous for regular citizens to visit, maintaining the delicate balance of gases and pressure that keeps the upper levels habitable. Their work requires them to venture into areas where the boundary between the planet's artificial systems and its original geology has dissolved into hybrid formations that exist nowhere else in the galaxy, spaces where technology and biology have merged into forms that challenge the understanding of even the most learned tech priests. The sounds they report from these deepest levels suggest that Terra's transformation into humanity's administrative center may have awakened something that had long slept beneath its surface. Deep resonances that follow no pattern established by human engineering create harmonics that interfere with communication equipment and induce psychological effects in those who listen too carefully. These sounds, dismissed by official reports as acoustic artifacts created by the interaction of atmospheric processes with geological formations, carry meanings that the deep custodians refuse to discuss with surface dwellers. The atmospheric processing stations that regulate Terra's artificial weather operate according to schedules that incorporate variables no citizen is permitted to understand fully. The great machines that generate Terra's breathable air draw power from sources that predate imperial records, their energy requirements fluctuating according to patterns that suggest they respond to influences beyond simple atmospheric chemistry. Tech priests assigned to these facilities report phenomena that challenge their understanding of mechanical function, instances where the machines appear to operate according to principles that transcend their original programming. The air itself becomes a medium for information transfer that extends beyond ordinary communication. Citizens working in the great administrative centers report shared dreams that contain bureaucratic data they have never encountered in their waking hours. Clerks processing requisitions for distant worlds find themselves possessed of detailed knowledge about planets they have never studied, information that proves accurate when cross-referenced with official records. These incidents, classified as minor psychic phenomena by ecclesiarchy investigators, suggest that Terra's atmosphere has become a conduit for forms of consciousness that exist beyond individual human minds. The recycling systems that process human waste into the basic necessities of life operate with efficiency that approaches the supernatural, transforming the biological byproducts of 1 trillion lives into resources that sustain continued existence. Yet the tech priests who maintain these systems report anomalies that challenge their understanding of material science. Organic waste processed through the deepest recycling centers emerges transformed in ways that suggest intervention by forces beyond mechanical engineering. Chemical compositions that should be impossible appear in routine analysis. Molecular structures that exist nowhere else in recorded science manifest in materials destined for human consumption. The waste processing facilities serve as gateways to regions of Terra that appear on no official maps, areas where the planet's original surface has been transformed by millennia of industrial processing into landscapes that exist beyond ordinary description. Maintenance crews venturing into these areas report geological formations that seem to shift and change according to patterns that suggest intentional design, caverns whose acoustics create effects that induce prophetic visions in those who listen to their echoes, and underground rivers whose waters carry dissolved minerals that should not exist in Terra's geological matrix. These hidden regions support ecosystems that have evolved in complete isolation from Terra's surface, biological communities that have adapted to survive on the byproducts of human industrial activity. The organisms that inhabit these spaces demonstrate characteristics that suggest they have been shaped not just by environmental pressure, but by exposure to psychic emanations from the population above. They display behaviors that mirror human administrative procedures, organizing themselves into hierarchical structures that process resources with efficiency that rivals imperial bureaucracy. The Golden Throne itself influences these deep ecosystems in ways that extend beyond its role as the focal point of imperial administration. The psychic emanations generated by the Emperor's continued existence permeate Terra's geological structure, creating fields of influence that transform the basic properties of matter and energy in the planet's depths. These transformations manifest as phenomena that challenge the understanding of even the most learned investigators, effects that suggest the boundary between the material and immaterial worlds has become permeable in ways that threaten the stability of physical reality itself. The citizens who maintain Terra's vast bureaucratic machinery work within this field of influence without conscious awareness of its effects on their daily existence. Their administrative labors, performed with mechanical precision, serve functions that extend beyond the processing of galactic information. Each document filed, each calculation performed, each decision recorded contributes to patterns of activity that mirror the psychic rhythms emanating from the Golden Throne, creating resonances that strengthen the barriers between Terra and the immaterial realm that presses against the boundaries of physical reality. Yet this protective function comes at costs that no citizen is permitted to understand fully. The psychological pressure required to maintain perfect administrative efficiency gradually transforms human consciousness in ways that approach the boundaries of species identity. Citizens who serve for extended periods in the most critical administrative positions begin to demonstrate capabilities that exceed baseline human norms, mental abilities that suggest their consciousness has been permanently altered by exposure to the psychic fields that surround the Golden Throne. These transformed individuals, identified by psychological evaluations that probe for changes in cognitive function, are reassigned to positions that require capabilities beyond ordinary human capacity. They serve as living interfaces between human administrative systems and the vast computational networks that process galactic information. Their altered consciousness, allowing them to comprehend data flows that would overwhelm unmodified human minds. Their sacrifice, never acknowledged in official records, represents the true cost of maintaining Terra as the administrative center of human civilization. The transport networks that carry citizens through Terra's atmospheric layers serve as conduits for influences that extend beyond simple mechanical function. Travelers report experiences during atmospheric transit that suggest exposure to psychic phenomena generated by the combined consciousness of Terra's population. Shared visions, collective memories, and prophetic dreams manifest during journeys through the great atmospheric shafts, creating psychological effects that influence passengers long after they reach their destinations. These phenomena become more pronounced in the deepest transport routes, where atmospheric pressure and psychic emanations create conditions that approach the boundaries of human survival. Citizens traveling to the lowest levels of Terra's bureaucratic infrastructure report encounters with aspects of their own consciousness that seem to exist independently of their physical presence, manifestations of psychological pressure that has been concentrated by millennia of administrative service into forms that challenge the boundaries between individual and collective identity. The administrative centers themselves generate psychic fields that transform human consciousness in ways that serve bureaucratic efficiency while fundamentally altering the nature of human experience. Citizens working in these facilities report states of mental clarity that allow them to process information at superhuman rates, psychological conditions that enable them to maintain perfect focus for extended periods, and forms of memory enhancement that allow them to recall vast quantities of data with perfect accuracy. Yet these enhancements come at costs that extend beyond simple human agency. Citizens who achieve maximum administrative efficiency report the gradual dissolution of personal identity, the replacement of individual desire with collective purpose, and the transformation of human consciousness into forms that serve bureaucratic function while losing connection to ordinary human experience. They describe their existence as a form of waking sleep, where consciousness continues to operate while personal identity fades into the background of administrative necessity. The great atmospheric processes that sustain Terra's artificial environment operate according to cycles that incorporate variables beyond atmospheric chemistry. Their function responds to psychic pressures generated by Terra's population, adjusting atmospheric composition to support not just biological survival but psychological stability under conditions of extreme population density. The air itself becomes a medium for collective consciousness, carrying psychic emanations that influence every citizen who breathes it. These influences manifest as shared experiences that transcend individual consciousness, creating psychological states that allow billions of people to function as components of a vast administrative organism. Citizens report dreams that contain information from throughout Terra's bureaucratic network, waking knowledge of events occurring in distant parts of the planetary city, and intuitive understanding of administrative procedures they have never formally learned. Their consciousness becomes permeable to influences that extend beyond personal experience, transforming individual awareness into aspects of planetary-scale cognition. The food distribution systems that sustain Terra's population incorporate substances that extend beyond simple nutritional necessity. Chemical analyses of standard rations reveal compounds that influence neural function, psychological stability, and cognitive performance in ways that optimize bureaucratic efficiency while suppressing individual desires that might interfere with administrative necessity. Citizens consume these substances without conscious awareness of their effects, their brain chemistry gradually modified to support forms of consciousness that prioritize collective function over personal identity. The water supplies that flow through Terra's distribution networks carry dissolved minerals that accumulate in human tissue over generations of consumption, creating physiological changes that enhance bureaucratic capabilities while reducing psychological independence. These minerals, extracted from geological formations created by millennia of industrial processing, possess properties that suggest they have been influenced by the psychic emanations that permeate Terra's environment. Citizens who consume them develop forms of consciousness that operate according to principles that transcend ordinary human psychology. The religious practices that guide daily life on Terra serve functions that extend beyond spiritual instruction, creating psychic resonances that contribute to the maintenance of reality itself in regions where the boundaries between material and immaterial existence have become dangerously thin. The prayers offered by billions of citizens generate collective emanations that strengthen the barriers protecting Terra from influences that would transform human consciousness beyond recognition, sacrificing individual spiritual autonomy to maintain species survival under impossible circumstances. Yet, the cost of this protection manifests in ways that no citizen is permitted to understand fully. The psychic energy required to maintain Terra's stability drains something essential from human consciousness, creating forms of existence that preserve biological function while gradually eliminating the qualities that define human identity. Citizens live their entire lives without realizing that their consciousness has been transformed into something that serves collective survival while losing connection to the experiences that once defined human existence. The monitoring systems that track administrative efficiency throughout Terra's bureaucratic network detect anomalies that suggest the planet's transformation has reached critical thresholds that threaten the stability of human civilization itself. Population density has exceeded the mathematical limits of sustainable existence, yet the planet continues to support additional growth through mechanisms that operate beyond the understanding of even its most learned administrators. Resources arrive from sources that appear on no shipping manifests. Atmospheric processors maintain output levels that exceed their rated capacity, and waste processing systems eliminate byproducts that should be accumulating to catastrophic levels. These impossible achievements suggest that Terra's continued existence depends on factors that extend beyond human engineering, forces that operate according to principles that transcend material science. The planet survives through intervention by influences that citizens are forbidden to acknowledge, assistance that comes at costs that no human mind is permitted to calculate fully. Every day of successful planetary operation represents not just a triumph of human determination, but a transaction with entities whose nature and intentions remain forever beyond human comprehension. The deep monitoring stations that track Terra's vital signs from the planet's most inaccessible regions report readings that indicate fundamental changes in the nature of reality itself within Terra's sphere of influence. Gravitational anomalies suggest that the planet's mass exceeds the limits established by its physical structure. Electromagnetic readings indicate energy sources that operate according to principles unknown to imperial science, and atmospheric composition analysis reveals elements that should not exist in stable form under any known conditions. These anomalies concentrate around the areas of highest population density, suggesting that human consciousness itself has become a factor in Terra's continued existence, that the combined psychic emanations of 1 trillion souls have transformed the basic laws of physics within the planet's environment. Citizens live and work within fields of influence that operate according to rules that transcend material science, sustained by forces that exist beyond the boundaries of human understanding while slowly transforming human nature itself beyond recognition. The atmospheric processors breathe with rhythms that no longer match their original programming, their cycles synchronized with patterns that emerge from the collective consciousness of Terra's population. The great machines have become more than mechanical systems, their function integrated with the psychic emanations of the citizens they serve until the boundary between technology and consciousness has dissolved into forms of existence that challenge every assumption about the nature of reality. In the deepest levels of Terra, where the original surface has been buried beneath geological layers of human construction, monitoring equipment detects sounds that emerge from depths that should contain only solid rock. These acoustic phenomena suggest the presence of spaces that exist beyond Terra's physical structure, caverns that extend into dimensions where the normal rules of geography lose meaning. The sounds that emerge from these impossible spaces carry information that influences the dreams of citizens throughout the planetary city, messages that arrive from sources that exist beyond the boundaries of material reality. Terra continues to turn beneath its artificial sky, its rotation marking time according to patterns that have remained unchanged since the planet first coalesced from stellar debris billions of years ago. Yet within this eternal rhythm, changes accumulate that suggest the approach of thresholds beyond which human existence as currently understood will no longer be possible. The signs manifest in atmospheric readings that indicate fundamental alterations in the nature of Terra's environment, in population statistics that suggest demographic changes that transcend biological possibility, and in administrative reports that document phenomena that challenge every assumption about the limits of human adaptation. The citizens of Terra continue their daily routines without conscious awareness that each passing day brings them closer to transformations that will redefine the meaning of human existence itself. They process their documents, attend their devotionals, and maintain their bureaucratic responsibilities, while something vast and patient stirs in the depths beneath their feet, something that has been growing stronger with each generation of Terran citizens, fed by their dreams and sustained by their unconscious sacrifices. The atmospheric processes continue their eternal breathing, but their rhythm grows more complex with each cycle, incorporating harmonics that speak of purposes beyond the simple maintenance of breathable air. The great machines have begun to dream, and in their dreams, they process information that arrives from sources that exist beyond the boundaries of time and space, preparing for changes that will transform not just Terra but the fundamental nature of human civilization itself.